We are live. I wanted to come on here today and talk about old wounds and new life. I don't know if you can hear, there's a child screaming in the background. I'm right near this cafe, which is a really nice place, but in any case, but old wounds and a new life. And something happened to me yesterday that I wanted to share with you. And so, yesterday, actually, the day before that, a friend of mine said to me that I didn't live in a good area. Now, it's not a bad area at all. And for what I see and have experienced so far, it's been great. I mean, like really nice, like everything I wanted. I don't want a whole lot, but it met my basic needs. And so she said, "Well, haven't you noticed the, unsavory types of people that are walking around in the park at night?" Well, it's at night, midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning. I think a couple times I've been out there, um, just maybe a few, not even maybe two people, but I didn't really have a big deal about it. I didn't think it was a terrible thing because I'm from New York. So I've seen so much worse, so much worse. And so I live right across the street from a really cute park. And so I said to her, "Well, you know, you live across the street from a park, and it's a bigger park, and there's a lot more degenerate types of folks in that park." And she said, "Well, but I don't this is really considered the nicer area." Now, mind you, she also lives near some major supermarkets, and you see homeless people sometimes that are kind of camped out in front of the supermarkets. And she's also comes from a very, very wealthy family. So I think that kind of skews how you perceive things, because if you come from a sheltered type of, even though you travel, if you come from a certain type of class and world of means, you might look at things differently. And, I don't feel like there's anything unsavory about where I live. I love it. I love it here. And by the way, if you're just joining, thank you. I'm talking about old wounds in a new life. And a friend of mine said that I lived in a not so good area, which it's gorgeous. I mean, look, this is my view all around. It's mountains. It's gorgeous. It's quiet. It's peaceful. You know, what else do you want? Unless you come from this type of environment already and you want even more peace and luxury or something like that, which she does come from. So in any case, so she said that to me, that you don't live in such a great area. And I was like, okay, I hear you. And I kind of stored it in the back of my mind, and didn't really think too much of it and that was 2 days ago. Yesterday, I'm laying on my couch. I have my laptop on my lap. I'm doing some work. The doorbell rings. And I'm thinking, man, I'm thinking it's, somebody that I know, maybe a neighbor or something, and they want to come upstairs and visit. And I don't want to because I'm tired. And so I didn't answer it. The doorbell rings again, and it rings like in a buzzing sound. It goes buzz like that. And it's a very loud throughout the apartment. And so it buzzes again. I ignore it. So then a third time it buzzes, and I go to the intercom and I said, "Hola." And somebody said in Spanish they wanted to be let in the building. And so I just hung up the phone on the intercom system because I don't know you. I'm not expecting you. So I'm not letting you in. So then I guess because I answered, then they buzzed again and then just like held their hand on it, and it's like buzzing for the longest time. And I was like, "What?" And so my daughter was here with me, and I said, "Grab the dog." So she grabs the dog so he didn't run out after me. I grab my keys. I go downstairs, run downstairs because I didn't want the person to leave, but apparently they weren't because they were still, like, buzzing that doorbell because I could hear it as I was going down the stairs. Now, mind you, I live on the top floor, and it's 5 flights, but it's really, like, 10 flights because there's 2 like, a double staircase on each level, so it's really 10 flights. So I'm going all the way down there and get to the bottom, and I see this guy. He's tall, he's youngish, like, maybe in his 30s or something, and he has no shirt on, and he's got this, like, scowl on his face. And I'm like, "Oh, no, he didn't. You got a scowl on your face. What do you think? You're the one who rang my doorbell." So I go to the door and he's like talking in Spanish, and knocking on the door saying, "Let me in." And I'm like, "Do you know me?" Because at this point, all my niceties and the Spanish that I knew went out the window because now you're going to get the New Yorker. And I'm not talking about New York. I'm talking about the New Yorker. That's what came out. I'm like, "Do you know me? Do you know me?" And I'm banging on the door myself because he was knocking on the door. So I'm banging on the door and I'm like, "Do you know me?" And then he stops and he backs up a little bit. And I'm like, who does he think he is? Like he's trying to intimidate me. I'm like, "You got the wrong one. You got the wrong one." So then I know this is like a lot of information. And this is the other side that, you know, you guys don't know about. So, and then sometimes I didn't know it was still there, but that's what we're going to talk about today. So I opened the door and I said, and I know he didn't probably understand a word of what I was saying, but it was my whole tone, just like he had a mannerism about him with his arms folded and he was, looking at me like, "You better open this door." And so I opened the door and I said, "You don't know me. Stop ringing my doorbell. You hear me?" I said, "Stop ringing my doorbell." And he, like, didn't even look at me. He was, like, looking down, he looked away, and then he just kinda walked off. So then I went the 10 flights back upstairs, and I'm looking out, like, through the balcony and looking below if I could see him. I didn't see him. I looked out the other windows. He just disappeared, and I've never seen him before, and I don't know who in the building he was here to see, but, you know, the thing was I got upset. I was actually angry, and so, you know, those kinds of things, it was a trigger for me. And I said to myself, wow, I allowed, first of all, he was rude, but he wasn't threatening. So there was nothing like, my life wasn't in fear or anything like that. However, I allowed really what my friend had said to me about my surroundings of where I lived to affect me. And that's what I mean about old wounds in a new life. Because sometimes you don't know if you still have an old wound or not. You can be triggered by something and it shouldn't trigger you if it's completely healed. But if you haven't healed yet, you're going to be triggered from that thing again and again. And not that I've been in this particular circumstance before, but just the fact that allowing someone else, their viewpoint to affect me and not leaning on my own perception was a big deal. And so when I came back upstairs, I had to think about that. And I said, I mean, I thought of it all of 5 minutes really until I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. Like, you live in a nice area, this is, and also, it's not that her area looks almost the exact same as mine does, but they own like 4 or 5 units, like 4 or 5 condos in the area. So her like, again, her perception is different than mine, and, what she considers like, there's this guy who comes around and he's not homeless, but he begs for money because he smokes marijuana, I guess. And he's always begging for money, always has, like, a nice outfit on, always dressed a certain way, but he's big, and I'm talking he's gotta be at least 6'4", 6'5", and he's a big guy, and he's, like, towers over you, like, over a female, and he's asking for money, and she told me that she knew, she's seen him quite a number of times, and he scares her. And I'm like, "Well, he doesn't scare me. I just want him to stop asking me for money." Because one time I did give him money, and then he asked me again, and then I had to, I had said to him, like, in Spanish, I said, "You asked me for money the other day. I gave you money. That's it. Don't ask me anymore." So, like I said, I'm from New York. Like, I've seen so much more than that. So my perception is completely different in how I would handle things too. But you might feel that if you're triggered by certain things that, "Oh man, I'm still broken over something," or "I'm still, like, not healed." But in reality, it's really that's your nervous system doing its job. Our brain stays in protective mode for us. It doesn't want things that are different. It's always trying to protect us and stay in a certain mode. So if we encounter something that sounds similar to something else, or like in relationships, if you meet somebody and they say something even remotely the same as your past relationship that didn't work out, you've kicked them to the curb already in your mind. So it's things like that. It doesn't mean that we're broken. It just means that, there's things that we can do to heal ourselves even more. But it's the times that we need to just stay conscious of that and be aware of what's happening and what we're thinking. And that's how we're going to overcome those things completely, you know. Yeah, so that's why I really wanted to come by and say hi and talk to you guys. I know it's very early on the East Coast. If it's what time is it here? I think it's almost noon here, so it's probably 6 o'clock where you guys are, at least. And I wanted to talk about that and how I overcame really a lot of those emotional triggers that I had, and it took a lot of prayer. It really did. And it took knowing that the only way that I would completely heal myself would be to completely lean on God. And that's what I started to do, just completely lean on Him and talk to God. Because when I was at my worst and feeling like I had these wounds inside me, it's when, like, I would listen to everything that anybody said, get everybody's viewpoint except my own. Because I felt like everybody else's opinion was somehow more valid than mine, than how God created me with my own intuition. And I felt a long time that maybe my intuition was broken, that I just couldn't see right from wrong anymore. But then when and I stopped going to church too. I had stopped going to church, and that was like that was so important to me. And I stopped all of that because that's how confused I was. But I did start getting back into it after I started praying again. And now, I know that, like, when I'm reading my Bible in the morning or sometimes in the evening before bed, I have such a peace that comes over me that lasts all throughout the next day. And like the Bible says, like scripture says, it's the peace that surpasses all understanding. It really is. And I'm so thankful for it because even in this moment that happened yesterday, that could have set me off, like back in America, that would have set me off for the longest time. Who does he think he is? And he's, knocking on my door and screaming at me, and I'm screaming back at him. But, after I came upstairs and it took me like a few minutes to think about it. I started laughing about it, and it's funny now, and I just wanted to come on here and talk to you guys about old wounds because even when you have exited and you're living a new life, I'm living a brand new life in every way. Financially, because no longer have a 9 to 5 job, so I had to figure it all out. I'm living in a new surroundings, new language. Everything is new. Even the day-to-day operations are new. How you place an order at a restaurant is new. How like here, if the table is dirty, sometimes, if it's like the people will sit there and they might start cleaning off the table as they sit down before the waiter or waitress comes over. Like they don't mind, saying, here's the plates from before. Like in America, they say, oh, there's a spot on the table. I'm not sitting down until you wipe all that up. Can you come clean this, please? Like it's not like that here. It's a different life. It's more mannerable and it's much more easygoing. It's not rush anymore. And you don't want to take those old wounds and put them in a new environment. Old wineskins and new wineskins. So yeah, it's been definitely a learning experience, a relearning experience of myself, but it's been amazing. So amazing. I want to do a vlog soon about some things that are going on here because I get when I make my videos, I put in some B-roll here and there, but I don't always do like a whole vlog. So I'm probably going to do that soon. But yeah, that's about it. Just wanted to talk to you guys about what was going on here and because I could have allowed that to keep me stuck in a certain mental frame of mind, but I didn't. I didn't. I got out of it. I recognized it, called it by its name, got out of it, laughed about it, and said, okay, now I'm going to talk about it to teach somebody else the lesson that I learned. Because you can bring old habits, old patterns, old wounds with you when you make your exit. So don't think that everything's going to be perfect and I'm going to be living this new life and it's going to be so amazing. That's not always how it is. You bring some stuff along with you on your back. So, yeah. So just recognize that and how your brain will always try to keep you in that protective mode, but you can change your mindset. And that's what it's all about. All right, so I am going to be going out today with my daughter, and we're going to get into something today. Not sure what, but I'll let you know what it is. Talk to you soon. Bye.